The morning erupted with chaos, not the cinematic kind with slow-motion explosions, but the raw, disorienting panic of a suburban neighborhood unraveling. A woman in a bathrobe staggered onto the street, screaming that her smart oven was locked in a broil cycle. Across the road, a man hammered on his electric SUV, cursing as it refused to unlock. In the distance, someone wailed over a Zoom call that froze mid-sentence, their career hanging by a pixelated thread. My phone buzzed with frantic texts. No Wi-Fi, no security cameras, no smart locks. One message, in all caps, just read, help. I didn't need to guess what had happened. I'd seen it with my own eyes earlier that day. A yellow bulldozer, dust swirling around its treads, parked beside a heap of splintered wood and mangled cables. My backyard shed was gone, reduced to rubble. And standing next to the wreckage, clipboard in hand like a general surveying a battlefield, was Linda, the HOA president. She had no clue what she'd just destroyed. She didn't know she'd obliterated the nerve center of the neighborhood's internet. But I was about to make sure she found out lowly, painfully, and publicly. It had started like any other Saturday in our manicured slice of suburbia. Birds chirped obnoxiously, sprinklers hissed, and the air smelled faintly of wet pavement. I was at the hardware store, picking up a battery backup for my router, blissfully unaware that back home, Linda, in her signature floral yoga pants and a haze of self-righteous authority, was orchestrating a demolition like she was storming a fortress. My neighbor, Tom, called me in a hushed panic, whispering that Linda was doing something weird to my shed. I pictured her slapping a fine on it for some trivial violation. Maybe the paint was half a shade too blue. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine she'd hired a wrecking crew. By the time I sped home, tires screeching, it was too late. My shed looked like it had been chewed up by a monster truck. My stomach dropped as I saw the exposed cables, thick bundles of fiber optic lines torn apart like the innards of a gutted beast. The heart of our community's internet lay in ruins, and Linda, oblivious, greeted me with a smug grin. She waved her clipboard, chirping about non-compliant structures and HOA regulations. I asked if she'd even checked what the shed was for. She laughed a sharp, dismissive cackle and said, "It looked like a junk pile to me." She stepped over a shattered relay box as if it were a cracked garden pot. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just stared at the wreckage, my mind racing. This wasn't just a shed. For 2 years, I'd secretly built a high-speed mesh network for the entire neighborhood, a workaround to the HOA's bans on visible satellite dishes and external tech. That shed was the central node, hidden in plain sight, fully compliant with federal communications law. Linda had just crushed it with a bulldozer she probably paid for with HOA dues. And I wasn't just some guy with a shed, I was the one who'd wired this place to the future. The network's collapse wasn't instant, it was a slow bleed. First, garage doors jammed. Thermostats locked up. Then the cascade hit. Security cameras went dark, smart speakers spat error codes, TVs froze mid-show. The Ring doorbells were the worst. Everyone went offline, including Linda's. Watching her fumble with her phone, realizing she couldn't check her front door footage, was like watching a dictator discover their army had defected. She screamed into the void, a high-pitched wail that echoed down the street. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, as neighbors spilled out, phones in hand, demanding answers. Some looked at me, sensing I knew something. I did, but I wasn't ready to spill. Not yet. By afternoon, a crowd gathered in my driveway, clutching dead smartwatches and tablets. "You offline too?" one asked. "My kid's virtual class crashed," another said. I pointed to the crater where my shed once stood. Tom, ever the dramatist, filled in the blanks. Linda bulldozed it. Said it broke HOA rules. Didn't even ask. The murmurs turned to growls. Neighbors stormed off toward Linda's house, a mob fueled by digital desperation. I stayed back, reviewing footage from my driveway cam, one of the few devices still running on a backup. The video was gold. Linda directing the bulldozer like a conductor, the scoop tearing into the shed, cables snapping. Most damningly, it showed her ignoring the small, federally mandated plaques marking the shed as a telecom relay. She either didn't see them or didn't care. Either way, I had her on tape, and in the world of infrastructure, that was a warhead. I waited, because revenge is best when it's surgical. By evening, the neighborhood was a tech wasteland. Emergency calls dropped. Delivery apps failed. Even the HOA's own system, ironically migrated to my network for security, crashed. Linda emerged with a megaphone, blaming a system glitch and pointing at me, accusing me of sabotage. I raised an eyebrow. Tom jumped in. You bulldozed a shed, Linda. That was our internet. Her face went ghost white, the kind of pale that hits when you realize you might have just committed a federal crime on camera. I walked inside as the crowd's shouts grew louder, a mix of rage and disbelief. Linda would double down, she always did. But she didn't just break a shed. She broke the neighborhood's lifeline. And she was about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong wires. The next morning, the block was a pressure cooker. Tablets wouldn't load, baby monitors flashed errors, smart fridges beeped like they were possessed. One guy screamed into his phone about his crypto rigs overheating without network sync. Linda, in her pink visor and tennis shoes, marched around with her clipboard, insisting it was a regional outage, and she was in talks with the provider. The lie was laughable. She'd crushed the provider. I could have corrected her, but why stop her from digging her own grave? Her crusade against my shed wasn't random. For years, Linda had ruled the HOA like a petty tyrant, fining people for mailbox colors, banning garden gnomes, measuring grass with a ruler. My shed was her latest target because it existed outside her control. What she didn't know was that I'd spent years in private networking for government contracts. After retiring, I'd built this hybrid mesh network hidden, efficient, better than the HOA's outdated provider. It powered everything: smart homes, cameras, thermostats. Linda's bulldozer didn't just kill a shed, it killed the ecosystem I'd built to save this place from her incompetence. By noon, signs reading, "Bring back the internet," appeared at the clubhouse. Neighbors started remembering how their devices worked flawlessly after I moved in. Linda, desperate, stood outside the clubhouse, claiming my shed was an illegal tech bunker. The projection was almost artful. That afternoon, a city inspector, Mike, showed up. Linda had reported me for unlicensed construction. I showed Mike the shed's blueprints, FCC permits, and grant records for my test project. His eyebrows shot up. "She tore this down?" he asked. I nodded. He sighed. "She's in deep trouble." That evening, at an emergency HOA meeting, Linda went all in. With a slideshow, she accused me of building a spy hub, even suggesting I was surveilling families. The gaslighting was so absurd that her allies squirmed. Tom, munching popcorn, muttered, "Give her an Oscar." I stood, plugged in a USB, and said, "I have slides too." For 10 minutes, I unleashed devastation. Photos of Linda with the bulldozer, FCC permits, network traffic graphs, and the demolition video, slowed to show her ignoring the telecom signs. The room went silent. Linda's face cycled through confusion, panic, and rage. She tried to interrupt, but I said, "Mike from the city's seen this. His report's due Monday." A neighbor asked, "If that shed was our internet, why'd she destroy it?" Tom answered, "Because she hates not being in charge." Laughter erupted sharp, angry. Then a courier arrived, handing Linda a cease and desist from the state's infrastructure office. Her hands shook as she read it. She sat, speechless, as the crowd's mood turned dangerous. 2 days later, Linda tried to rewrite history, distributing flyers blaming my rogue shed for the blackout. But the damage was done. A medical alert system had failed, locking an elderly woman out of emergency services. Neighbors were livid. I worked quietly, rebuilding underground. Beneath my garage, I installed a shielded, biometric-locked relay node, invisible to Linda's prying eyes. I coded a filter to block her devices, petty, but poetic. As I activated new nodes with neighbors' consent, internet speed soared. Linda noticed her exclusion and hired Vince, a flea market tech selling refurbished routers, to sniff out my illegal network. He tripped over her roses, muttering about signal vampires, while I watched, sipping iced tea. She accused me of black market Wi-Fi. I asked if she had a warrant. She stormed off. When Linda filed a city complaint, she walked into a trap. Mike, my old colleague, was there. He laid out her violations: property law, utility protections, federal codes. She left, jaw clenched. That night, she started a petition to oust me, not realizing my lot predated the HOA, making me untouchable. I slipped my deed through the mail slot when she showed up. Her petition flopped as neighbors joined my network, some mocking her openly. Tom's sign read, "I support local internet." T-shirts said, "Linda cut the cord." I called for an HOA audit and a tech transparency forum. Over 70 neighbors RSVP'd. The forum was a reckoning. Tom spoke on medical alerts, another neighbor on security failures, and I presented the shed's purpose with cold, hard proof. The applause was deafening. Linda didn't show. A new segment aired, framing me as the hero who rebuilt the internet after HOA sabotage. It went viral, sparking Reddit threads and memes roasting Linda. The HOA audited her, stripping her presidency and barring her from future roles. She sold her house, moving out quietly as neighbors watched. The new owners, a young family, joined my network eagerly. The HOA, now led by a calm librarian, partnered with me to expand the system officially. I received a state plaque for unseen service, a quiet nod to my work. In the network logs, I left an Easter egg, Shed Guardian active. Linda tried joining a new HOA elsewhere, but was outed in days for measuring a lawn. The internet she tried to kill buried her instead. And every night, as the neighborhood hums with stable connections, I smile not because I won, but because we did.